Hey, it's Checkmate here with another how-to tutorial for the Die in the Dungeon demo. At this point, I've beaten the boss many times, and I'd like to share with you what I've learned about the boss mechanics, their Phase 2 variants, and the best strategies and builds in under 10 minutes, so that you also can make these guys look easy. Please subscribe to the channel for future Die in the Dungeon tutorials. First of all, let's review the basic boss mechanics. There are two mantises for this fight, each with 40 HP apiece. The purple mantis is called the sickle, and the taller green mantis is called the scythe. The sickle has the monitor modifier, so it deals 1 damage every time dice are placed on monitored spots. There are 4 purple spots on the board placed at random. The modifier fires and deals 1 damage to the player every time a die is placed on one of these purple slots, even if the same die is picked up and put back on the same spot. Its base attack starts at 1 and escalates by 1 per turn. However, the monitor damage stays at 1 and does not escalate. The scythe uses the Reaper modifier, so its attack value will be increased by the value of all dice placed on the reap slots. There are 4 red and green marked spots on the board at random. The damage from the total reaped slots is added simultaneously to its base attack. As an example, if you play a 3 boost on a 2 attack, both on the reaped spots, the scythe will receive his normal 1 base attack, plus 3 from your boost die, plus another 5 from your boosted attack die, for a total of 9 attack damage. Like the sickle, its base attack starts at 1 and escalates by 1 per turn. Both bosses cover separate slots on the board, leaving 1 blank spot at random that does not trigger either modifier. When one boss is killed, the other resets to an angry Phase 2 variant. The sickle monitor modifier changes, so it deals 2 damage every time dice are placed on monitored spots. This time, 8 slots are marked purple, leaving only 1 blank. Its base attacks escalate by 1 damage each turn. The Scythe Reaper modifier will change, so its attack and block value will be increased from the value of all dice placed on the reap spots. The board will now be covered at random with 4 green and red slots and 4 green and blue slots, with 1 remaining slot still left blank. In our previous example, if the 3 boost die was played on one of the blue reaped spots, the Scythe would receive 6 attack and 3 block. One thing to note is that the block applies at the end of the Scythe's turn and carries over to the start of your next turn. Its base attacks escalate by 1 damage each turn. In terms of overall strategy for this boss fight, the order in which you kill the Phase 1 Mantis will determine which Phase 2 you will face. The Sickle Phase 2 is significantly easier to beat and to prepare your deck for. Remember to prep during the Phase 1 battle and stack modifiers on yourself, the board, or the boss for Phase 2. General strong decks will work to kill the boss. Similar rules apply to this demo as to the Origins or Prologue version. Keep your hand size small, to around 5 or 6 strong dice for consistent rolls. Look for synergies between the relics you pick up and the dice in your hand. If you have relics that trigger on even numbers, customize your dice to roll evens. Or if you have a relic that gives you block, you might discard the block die for some healing. Finally, I will mention that balancing changes in the future should be implemented and may change some of the specific builds I recommend or kill them entirely. First up, there are a few really powerful relics that have no downside and will really help in the boss fight. The Suppressing Eye causes target enemy to receive -1 to all their attacks. This completely nullifies the monitor modifier during Phase 1, and even brings the Phase 2 monitor modifier down to 1 damage per turn. This relic can be paired with literally any run. It has no downside and is actually a fairly common tier relic. In a similar vein, if you have the Minor Helmet at the start of your turn, get block equal to the number of the current turn, meaning on turn 1 of the fight you get 1 block at the start of your turn, on turn 2 you get 2 block at the start of your turn, and so on. This completely negates the escalating damage of the bosses. This is a relic that I'm pretty sure will get balanced out, but for the time being it has no downside and fits perfectly with any hand. The dice mods Flash and Heavy can be implemented in any build and help counter one boss or the other. Use Flash to counter the Scythe's Phase 2. The Flash dice do not stay on the board after being played, so you can boost up a spot, use a Flash die attack, and then remove the boost die, getting free damage. The Scythe can do absolutely nothing. Use Heavy dice to counter the Sickle's Phase 2. After you put the dice down for the first time, they're not placed on the board again, so the monitor effect is not triggered, giving you free damage or block. However, Heavy by itself is rather weak, so pair it with Grow to keep a consistent block or damage output. Terrain is versatile enough to be useful in either Phase 2 boss. It can be used in Phase 1 to boost a spot that will stay high going into Phase 2. It's a tactic that's slightly better in the Sickle Phase 2. I mentioned that the sickle had an easier phase 2 in general, but when you boost with terrain in the scythe's phase 2, you can end up boosting the scythe as well and easily get one shot by him. Terrain is better for the scythe when paired with a flash attack or block on the boosted spot. The first build is incredibly strong and focuses on doubling damage output using dice that roll ones. You need the relic Tadpole Jar. Dice with a face value of 1 get ×2 to their final value. Also, look for the Forgotten Manifesto. Dice with all faces equal receive +1 extra value. As a chef's kiss, the mirror dice will copy the dice that are on the slots as many spaces away as the dice value. Use the campfire rest spots to redistribute your starting attack and block dice to roll all ones. Forgotten Manifesto makes these values actually count for 2, which isn't much until you start using boost dice and then add in Tadpole Jar. After all the boosting, the Tadpole Jar makes the final damage output easily reach 20 to 40. Mirror dice copy the final doubled value of the attack dice and can be boosted by boost dice and then will be doubled again by Tadpole Jar. Non-faulty mirror can also be changed to roll 2s, which will copy even more dice on the board. This build is very easy to make work since the Tadpole Jar is commonly given in events or in the shops. It's also very approachable to change your dice to roll ones. Do not try to pair Flash with this build. Mirror and Flash do not work together and you will lose out on a ton of damage. This build requires placing many dice on the board, but it is actually safer to play against the Sickle phase 2, as you can easily allow the Scythe to one-shot you if you don't one-shot him. The next insane build focuses on boosting dice that roll 3s, and I'm talking boosting it into the stratosphere. Check out the Watermelon Slice. If exactly 3 dice on the board have a face value of 3, all dice on the board get ×3 extra value. Additionally, the Triangle Amulet, which I think looks exactly like a Dorito, makes dice with a face value of 3 get +3 extra value. So upgrade your attack dice or a block die to silver and then to gold tier to roll only 3s. Upgrade 1 or 2 of your boost dice to also roll 3s. The Dorito makes the 3s on action dice, like attack or block, gain extra value, so they practically roll 6s every time. Then the other relic, Watermelon, goes and triples the value on top of that, which gives you insane numbers for damage or block. The Watermelon boosts the entire board, so you can play more dice than 3 dice, as long as they also don't roll 3s, for even bigger damage. This is a very powerful build, and can work well with other strategies since it only requires you to play 3 3s, which leaves at least 2 more dice to do something silly with. It's a little bit less accessible than the last one due to the relics themselves being a little more rare, and also due to the amount of upgrades you need to pull it off. The new dice types are pretty effective counters to the boss fights by themselves. Regen can be used to stack the frog going into the second phase. It applies heal at the end of your turn, so you can top up on health at the start of every turn. Barrier plays a similar role with block, and the two together can really turn the frog into a tank at the start of each turn. Poison can stack up on the boss going into the second phase, but you have to be careful to stack a ton of poison on the boss you don't kill first. If you pull it off, poison allows you to do free damage without risking either boss modifier once it is applied. Now, Thorns is extremely overpowered, especially against the Sickle boss. It has an energy cost of 2, but just find Hollow in the shop for 8 souls, or find it in the Shade event that lets you choose Heavy or Hollow. The Hollow Thorns cost goes right down to 0, and you can start playing it for free. Build up a really large amount of Thorn stacks going into phase 2. Then the Sickle fight can be easily cheesed by placing a die over and over again on a monitor spot. The Sickle only does 1 or 2 damage, but you can counterattack with 10 or 20 damage at a time. If possible in phase 1, kill the Scythe without too many counterattacks from the Sickle, and you have an easy peasy phase 2, which is also really easy to make happen. The Thorns mod is still really powerful. The Scythe's block expends before it attacks, so it takes Thorn damage directly against its HP regardless of its defense. This may be a bug, but right now this means you can cheese the Scythe phase 2 as well just by boosting its defense. Comment below if this video helped your fight against the Mantis boss. Hopefully this helps explain the basic mechanics of both the Sickle and the Scythe, as well as their phase 2 mechanics. I've also given a general strategy outline, specific overpowered builds, and some tips on specific relics and dice that will help ensure your victory. Thank you for watching.